Well, we're out of the paint shop, which is right there. And we're about ready to put this thing back together. So the first step in this is getting all the seals replaced. So I've gone through and pressed in new seals in all of these little retainers. I just marked the ones that came out of it and put it back. I've got everything cleaned up, polished up, painted up. Everything looks good. I don't see any issues with anything. I did forget to mention when we took this apart that there's two little interlock bars that go in here. I'm gonna put those in here in just a second, but we basically got everything ready to go. And there's a couple of issues with the prior build, including this idler shaft where the teeth were all cross-threaded, or someone had gotten a nut on there crooked. But I was able to take a thread file. I don't know if any of you have one of these, but this is a thread file. And I managed to get the threads filed back smooth in parallel so I can get the nut on it. It was out on the end, so the nut really comes in tight, so it's not going to affect the nut. But at this point, we're going to work on getting this idler shaft with this big gear in here, and we'll start putting it back together. All right, first off, I cut a little piece of shim stock that's probably about 20 thousandths. I'm going to set that in here, and then I'm going to take these bearings that go in here. This is the big inside, and first off, I'm going to just drizzle a little bit of assembly lube in these bearings, just to kind of give them a little bit of lubrication while we're putting this thing together, and shortly thereafter. I kind of like to put assembly lube in all this stuff when it's going back together. All right, so we're going to get some bearings in there, and then when I took this thing apart, these shims were on the outside, and that's not really where these shims go. I got the parts diagram reference, and these shims, there's 3. There can be different numbers. That sets the preload on the bearings. These shims sit on top of that, and then the spacer sits down on top of that. You kind of got to line these things up. I think I'm going to actually put if I put just a little bit of assembly lube on these, it'll probably help to stick them together a little bit. Make them quite so slippery. I'm going to put the shim down on there, and then on this other bearing, we got the same thing. So we're going to take and I'm going to set this down. I'm going to have to get it centered up first. Looks pretty close. I'm going to kind of set this down on top of that other bearing, nice and gently. Okay, got that. Now we're going to put our, I'm not sure if these are slippery or with lube or without lube, but I'm going to put them on there anyway. So I'm going to put our spacers on here over the top of the bearing spacer. I can put lube on this once I get it in there. Okay. Now I got to get a little pick. I thought I had a pick out here. Kind of line these spacers. They're still pretty close. So that our shaft has a half a chance of going in there. And then I'm going to slide this over. Maybe. There we go. Now I should be able to kind of slide that right over the top of that. I'm going to pull my shim stock out. That keeps those bearings from falling down in that hole. And then we're going to go back and get our holes kind of lined up with our spacers. Clear shot all the way through there. I got my shaft that I fixed up. I'm gonna just put a little bit of lube on this just to help it go through these bearings, because they were kind of tough. Remember in the disassembly, getting them peened out of there. Get a rag, and then I'm gonna have to kind of drive that down through there. Okay, now we're down at the bottom of our case, and we should be able to now I'm going to rotate this up. Threads are coming through. Gears rotating, kind of check that as I go. So now we can put our nut on here. Hope it'll go on there. It's going on nicely. I'll lift the nut off. I'm gonna go get my impact driver and the torque wrench, and we'll get that tightened up and torqued up at 125 pounds. All right, now we're gonna get these shift interlock pins in. Forgot to mention in the other disassembly video that these pins interlock are way up in the top of this thing. You want to take those out. That was actually what was holding when I was in the disassembly, I was trying to get that one out, and this pin was what was holding it in place. So I put a little bit of lube on them, and I'm just basically going in there and kind of centering them in the hole, just like so. And then we've got to make sure that we get our fork straight, our interlock pin straight. So I'm going to put a little, let's do it with my hand here, put a little bit of lube on the seal so it goes in nice without tearing our seal. And I got the detents going up here, so I'm going to just kind of work this into the seal. Boom, slides in there nicely. We're going to put our fork in there. A long part of the fork is going to go this way, so it lines up with that roll pin. Just kind of working that in where it goes. Yep, so that's about where that goes. I'm going to do the same thing on this other one. A little lube on this shaft as well. Put the fork in here. Our little detent's not hanging us up. Okay, we got our detents there. So now I think we're going to work on getting this shaft put back in place. Okay, we got these in. Now we're going to work on, we'll put a little bit of lube in the bearing. And we're going to work on getting this front input shaft in. So we're going to take this, tap it in again just from the outside. Okay, we got that seated in there nicely. Meshes with that other gear. Just right back on there where it was. Get up in that fork. I know you can't see on the camera, but I'm just taking this synchronizer gear and fitting it up into the slot. Maybe. All right, we got that in there, and that's all squared away, working right. Now I think we want to put this pin in this fork. We'll have to work on lining that roll pin hole up. All right, I took a little thin piece of rod that'll go inside this roll pin and come back out. And then I'll cut another little piece of stainless rod to go over that's the size of the roll pin. And so I'm gonna attempt to just put this down in that hole. Can't tell if that's in the hole or not. Let's see if it gets started. Yep. Yep. So that now that I got the roll pin started in there, I'm gonna get fancy dancy roll pin punches. See that? Looks like it's just about where it needs to go. I'm gonna get a bigger roll pin punch so that it'll go in there. Yep. So it'll bottom out, which it just did. Okay. So now we got that in there, no problem. And we're gonna now have to see if we can't figure out how to get this little clip back on here. Clip is what holds this thing on in place. This was a pain in the ass to get off. I'm gonna turn around this where I can see it. Okay, so now we're seated. Fork's in there. Meshes up with the synchronizers. Everything still turns. All right, now we're gonna get this other roll pin in, and I got the hole lined up. I'm gonna have to lift that up slightly. So I went back to my same little tool here. There's a pin on a pin. think I quite got it started there. That felt like it started. So now that I got it started, this one's a tad bit easier because it's flush, more or less flush with the top. Again, I have a roll pin. It's got a rounded deal rather than a flat piece. So when it goes down, it's bigger than the hole, so it goes down in seats. So we know we got that down on there nice and flush. Yep, perfect. It's all moving like it's supposed to in those detents. I'm gonna go ahead and put my little ball and spring. Here's a spring stuck to the magnet. I knew it was right there somewhere. So I'm gonna just take these. We need to get the bearing in there. I should have put the bearing in there before I flipped it upside down. I think what I'm gonna do is just take this retaining spring off and put it in from the top. So we're gonna just take it and put this in from this side. I'm gonna go, now I got it seated down on there, we're gonna get a punch. Well, I'd probably do it with this one on here. So I can kind of tap it from the outside all the rest of the way. All right, so that ring is, retaining ring is, slot is available. All right, we got that snapped up in there. Now we're gonna take, back to what I was doing, we're gonna take this and just lay it right over the top of this. I'm gonna set the thrust washer onto the top. We're gonna take this gear here, finagle it down around this shifting fork, mesh it in the gear, keeping our thrust washer kind of lined up with the center. And we're going to take this, and I hope I can get this on with this. Looks like it can. So we're going to have to line this all back up. Get this, get that all squared away in there. Be handy if that were synced onto that deal to hold it where it needs to go. Looks pretty good. And then we should be able to just take this and gently, maybe drop it right down through the middle. Bingo. So we now got that in there. We got the shifting fork in there. That's working properly. So I think we got that in place. And now we're probably ready to put our big end cap on. Where we're going to. Right here. So we're going to put these bearings on here. Again, this kind of got to go one way. Spin this around where it goes. We should be able to secure that. So I'm going to probably, I want to see about, I want to find my little pins here, get some petroleum jelly grease put in here, and then we'll make sure we can set that back down on there. Okay, first thing we're going to do is put a little bit, dab of sticky grease inside this big end cover, and some expectation we're going to set all of these in here. Okay, now I got all these little bearings in here. They're all at just the right number. I don't want to keep track of the number here. That's important. So we got all those in there. I'm going to now go wash my hands, and I'm going to lightly coat this gasket right here to go on this piece right here. I'll be right back. All right, I had to go drill this son of a bitch out, but now I've got it more or less flowing. All right, so I'm just trying to put a thin layer on this just to seal it up. I don't want it oozing out of the case. I want to make sure the threads are good. So I'm going to just do both sides of this. You could also do this with just copper coat and probably be just as well off. All right. There's one side, only one way to do it. Just like that. Get all this muck off my hands. It's a little messier than this normally has to be with that tube not working right. Have to go to a play which I'm really excited about with my wife tonight, so I just want my hands to look really clean. All right, now we should be able to take this, kind of match up these holes, and very gently set it down on those bearings. Boom, just like that. And before I got started on this thing, when I was painting it, after I got done painting it, when I took all the tape off, I came through here. Actually, I'm gonna put a little thread sealant on there, but I came through and chased all these threads so they'll all go in nice and smooth by hand. I'm gonna go get some thread sealant. So this is thread sealant. Doesn't take very much of this. And you also don't want this bleeding out everywhere. Some of these are blind holes that you wouldn't need it, but I don't really have all the blind holes mapped to the ones that aren't blind, so I'm just going to do every one of them. And I took all of these bolts and I bead blasted them with glass bead, and then I put them through the parkerizing process. So these are all manganese phosphate black parkerized, and should be good here. Nice contrasting. Some people put them in stainless. Some people put them in yellow zinc. Whatever you kind of like to look at. About the only thing you can't really get these in cadmium, which is probably what they were originally. Our boys at the EPA have pretty much shut all the cadmium plating down. Okay, so I should have that. I'm gonna go get my torque wrench back out and find the torque specs for 3/8/16 bolts, and then I'll torque all these down and we'll have that side pretty much done until we flip it back over. Okay, torque spec is 20 and 11. 20 for 9/16 and 11 for 5/16. All right, perfect. And since these are all got thread sealant on them, I backed off the torque to about 17. So now I think we're ready to see if we can put this little cover here on. Go through the same process. You know how I like this sticky shit. Okay, that. Some of these fingerprints while I'm in here. All right, okie dokie. Okay, now we're going to put this little 4-bolt cover on. Oh, I love it when I drop shit on the floor. All right, and this is the one that's important, that there's a drain hole, oil hole here. And you want to make sure that you get this oil hole lined up. When I took this thing apart, remember this was not lined up in the right place. So kind of want to make sure that this is lined up, because this oil is supposed to be able to drain back in through here. So the little hole's right there. So we're going to put it right over this drain hole. Okay, now that I got them kind of held in place, now I'm going to come put the sealant on them. Okay. everything's still turning good. So I think we are down to, probably ought to go ahead and spin around, get it up on blocks, get this last piece in. This is going to be the tough piece. This is one that's got this double layer of these needle bearings. I can get it in. By hook or by crook. All right, I tried to show this on the camera, but you can't see it. So down inside this thing, there's a little washer, and that washer has to be at the top of these needle bearings. So it's a little bit of a trick to get the needle bearings on the other side of that washer. There's also a hole in the shaft, so if you go too far, they want to fall down in that hole. So I'm just trying to kind of work these one at a time. Fortunately, there's only about 20 of them. Down into this area where this washer is. I got these little hook picks. Okay, so I think there should be 15 of these. Yeah, 15 of these in there. So you want to make sure you get all 15 in there, all up against the wall. And then this should, I can sneak this down on there without knocking those loose. Boom. Synchronizer's there. Everything's good to go on that front. Now, put a spacer on there. We got all these little ball bearings that go in here, which sit down on top of that. And we got to get our speedometer gear and our speedometer drive gear and all these little pins in this spot. And put a little grease in here like we did the other ones. So hopefully it'll hang on to all these little pins. Okay, so I'm going to get my gasket ready and then we'll put this down on top of that shaft. Now we've got our gasket, just a thin coat of gasket sealer on there. And as you recall, we just got these bearings all put back in here. These all look good, so now I'm going to just sneak this down right on top of this, hopefully without knocking all those bearings out. Slid down on there nicely. We're going to put our bolts in here. Again, these have all been Parkerized, and probably ought to just put some thread sealant on these as they go down. I do want to make sure that I can get my speedometer gear down on top of there. I got the little spacer on there. I think I'm going to put just a little lube on this. Yep, and then we're going to put our speedometer gear in here. Again, I'm going to just put a little lube on it so that it assembly lube. Keep this nice and fresh. That goes in the way that's supposed to. And then we're going to put this on there. This is supposed to have a gasket or an O-ring though, so I'm gonna have to find this gasket and O-ring and put it back in there. All right, I went and can't find any reference to whether there's supposed to be a gasket on there or not, but it's a metal mating surface that has fluid in it. So I put a little O-ring, found an O-ring that fits, put that on there, and we're going to now, I got thread sealant on all the rest of my bolts, so I'm going to go ahead and get them pulled down on here and torqued up. Okay, looks like I got it funneled in there. Drive pin's moving freely. I'll go ahead and torque this thing down. Make sure I'm going to get a speedometer cable and make sure that thing spins in there. All right, I went in and put a speedometer cable in there. That thing spun good, no problem. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't hung up or bound in any way before we get this last piece on this side put in. So we now got it gooped up. And I'm going to put this notch oil drain back to the bottom, although there's no hole in this side, so it's not really critical. Okay, so we got that yoke on there. Again, these do penetrate through, so we're going to put thread sealant on all these. Okay, now we got this side all torqued down, no problem. And the paint department got slowed up, got interrupted by the requirement to go to a play last night, so we didn't get everything painted black. So I painted the yokes this morning. We'll come back and put the yokes on a little bit later. Next thing I want to do is go ahead and put these expansion plugs back in this, back in these roll pin holes. So we're just going to take this plug, put it on a punch that fits down in the end of it. I usually like to put just a little bit of sealant on the outside of it. I think I'm going to just do off this cardboard. put a little bit of pookie around the outside of it. Get it lined up in the hole. Sorry, I can't really. Okay, that pushed in there nice and flush. Do the same thing over here. Just take it out of the deal since I'm standing here. Okay, got those sealed down. So I think we got everything on this side. It's time to flip this thing over one more time, which is now super heavy. And with the adapter plate on and the cover plate, and then we should be good to go. So now that we got the, I'm gonna go ahead and get these tightened up. I didn't tighten these up. Okay, pockets in. Now I'm gonna get over here, see if I'm strong enough to roll this thing up. At this point, I got it muscled up right side up, and I'm gonna just pour a little, about a half a quart of gear lube in here. This is 85/90, just to give it some lube on all these gears. Already feeling better. NP205 should take 85/90 lube, gear oil. Yeah, now it's already sounds a lot nicer, and takes about 2.5 quarts. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and put this PTO cover. We're not running a PTO, so we're going to put this cover on. Same drill, my favorite scoop. Now all of these bolts penetrate the case, so we're going to for sure put thread sealant on all of these. And in the oh by the way category, the indention goes out. Get that pushed to the outside. And kind of the way I know that, I had to look closely, is that there's teeth marks on this side of the cover where the little lock washers go. Batteries may be low. Okay. And the last thing here is putting the adapter plate on. All right, we got that gooped up and placed on there. I'm gonna put, there's an O-ring in here. Gasket fell down. There's a little O-ring on this shaft that goes up and seals the output shaft of this adapter ring. There's a seal on the inside, but this has to go up in here and made up, and then it kind of goes up on that O-ring, just like that. Okay. I'm just putting 2 bolts in here to get this thing put in place, and then I'm going to put the Parkerized bolts with sealer in them. Okay, got that all squared away. So now we're ready to put our 2 yokes on, which after I got them all cleaned up, look just fine. We'll torque those things down. We'll put our plate in here and pretty much call this project done. So get all the fingerprints wiped off with a clean rag, and at the end of the day, this took probably about 2 hours this morning, 4 hours yesterday, 6, a day to take it apart. So it takes about 2 days, 16 hours to completely redo this transfer case. Check all the bearings out, get all the seals replaced, clean everything thoroughly, paint it properly, Parkerize all the bolts. If you just bought new bolts, probably 50, 60 bucks worth of bolts in this thing. If you bought new stainless bolts, they're all 9/16 with a 3/8 thread, except for I think the 3 right here, which are 5/16, half-inch head, but 5/16 thread. So I went through and Parkerized all of them because they've got this little special washer on them, and we wanted the original OEM bolts back in it. But all in all, that's probably about 2 days worth of work. And I bought all the gaskets through a seal kit from Torque King, and this is probably they have all the parts for these cases. This is an exploded diagram that I bought for it, but Torque King, you know, has a really nice product line. I don't see their website on this book, surprisingly enough, but I've now bought about 4 of these sets, including one that was a complete bearing, seal, and everything for the NAPCO transfer cases, and those are about 150, 160 bucks. I think this kit was about 50 bucks. I did put a double seal in the output, which I think is over here. There's a double seal in that one, which they recommend. So, you know, it's 2 days, and let's just round it up and say $100 worth of parts and paint to get it done. So hope this helps. If you got any questions or comments, let me know, and be sure and like it if you thought it was helpful. Have a nice day.
Download the Resto-Rat app today to begin managing, tracking, and documenting your restoration project.